The old wooden cabin was filled with the aroma of pine, mingling with the scent of aged wood and the faint hint of decay. The walls, adorned with cobwebs, whispered stories of the past. The air was thick with a musty atmosphere, and the faint scent of decay lingered in the corners, adding to the eerie ambiance of the place. It was a place forgotten by time, nestled deep within the woods, far from the hustle and bustle of modern life. The cabin stood as a silent guardian of secrets long buried. A single flickering light illuminated a small makeshift table in the center of the room. The candle's flame danced, casting shadows that seemed to come alive. Tonight was special. Tonight was Sarah's birthday. Sarah, a young woman with bright eyes and an infectious laugh, sat at the table. Her friends had gone to great lengths to make this night memorable, and she appreciated their efforts. She was excited, but a knot of unease tightened in her stomach. The cabin's atmosphere was unsettling, and she couldn't shake off the feeling that something was amiss. Her friends had insisted on this bizarre ritual to celebrate. They had spoken of it with such enthusiasm, describing it as a unique tradition that added a touch of mystery to the occasion. They assured her it was harmless, a tradition passed down through generations. They laughed and joked, trying to ease her nerves, but the unease remained. Sarah stared at the candle, its flame flickering as if it held secrets of its own. The symbols carved into the wax seemed to pulse with an otherworldly energy. It was black as night and carved with strange symbols. Each symbol seemed to tell a story, one that Sarah couldn't quite decipher but felt deeply connected to. She couldn't shake off the feeling that something was wrong. The air seemed to grow colder and the shadows around her deepened, but she pushed her doubts aside, not wanting to spoil the fun. She forced a smile, determined to enjoy the night despite her growing apprehension. She closed her eyes and made a wish. In that moment she hoped for happiness, for peace, and for the unease to vanish. Little did she know this night would change everything. The air grew heavy as her friends began to chant in low voices. The words were in a language Sarah didn't understand. They circled the table, their shadows dancing ominously on the log walls. The candle flame flickered, casting grotesque shapes that writhed in the darkness. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. The playful mood had evaporated, replaced by an oppressive silence broken only by the monotonous chanting. She tried to smile to convince herself it was all in her head. But fear, cold and sharp, began to grip her heart. The chanting grew louder, more intense. The cabin seemed to vibrate with an unseen energy. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. She wanted to scream, to run, but her body felt paralyzed. She was trapped. A low hum filled the air, growing steadily in volume. It was a sound that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere all at once, making the hairs on the back of Sarah's neck stand on end. She strained her ears, trying to pinpoint its source, but it was elusive, slipping through the shadows like a ghost. The temperature plummeted, and Sarah swore she saw her breath crystallize in front of her. The cold was unnatural, seeping into her bones and making her shiver uncontrollably. She wrapped her arms around herself, trying to ward off the chill, but it was relentless, gnawing at her resolve. The candle flame, now an unnatural green, danced wildly, casting grotesque shadows that seemed to writhe and contort with a life of their own. The flickering light played tricks on her eyes, making the shadows appear as if they were reaching out to her, beckoning her into the darkness. The chanting reached a fever pitch, then stopped abruptly. The sudden silence was deafening, leaving a ringing in her ears. It was as if the very air had been sucked out of the room, leaving a void that pressed in on her from all sides. Silence descended, heavy and suffocating. It was a silence that seemed to have weight, pressing down on her chest and making it hard to breathe. She felt as if she were drowning in it, struggling to draw in each breath. Sarah's eyes darted around the room, searching for her friends. They were gone. Panic began to set in as she realized she was alone. The room, once filled with familiar faces, was now a void of emptiness, amplifying her sense of isolation. The only light came from the eerie green flame of the candle, illuminating the empty chairs around her. Each chair seemed to hold a shadow of its own, as if the people who had once occupied them had left a part of themselves behind. A wave of dizziness washed over her. She swayed on her feet, reaching out for something to steady herself, but there was nothing. The room seemed to spin around her, the shadows closing in, making her feel as if she were on the edge of a precipice. The air felt thick and cold, pressing against her like icy fingers. It was a suffocating cold, one that seemed to seep into her very soul, chilling her from the inside out. She could almost see the cold, a mist that hung in the air, swirling around her. She could feel eyes on her, watching her from the darkness. It was an unsettling sensation, as if unseen forces were observing her every move, waiting for the right moment to strike. She turned, trying to catch a glimpse of her watchers, but saw nothing. A low growl, barely audible, sent shivers down her spine. Something was here. It was a primal sound, one that spoke of danger and predation. Her heart pounded in her chest as she realized she was not alone in the room. The presence was close, and it was watching her. Whispers, faint and chilling, slithered around the edges of her consciousness. They seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once, whispering her name, beckoning her closer to the darkness. Fear, raw and primal, threatened to consume her. She tried to stand, to run, but her legs felt like lead. The whispers grew louder, more insistent. They spoke of forgotten rituals, of ancient evils, of sacrifices made under a watchful moon. The cabin no longer felt familiar. It felt alive, pulsating with a dark and sinister energy. Then she saw it. A figure, tall and skeletal, emerged from the shadows in the corner of the room. Its eyes, burning red coals in the darkness, locked onto hers. A low growl rumbled from its throat, sending a fresh wave of terror crashing over her. The candle flame sputtered, threatening to extinguish itself. Panic surged through Sarah. She knew with a certainty that chilled her to the bone that if the flame died, she would be trapped here forever with this thing. She had to keep the flame alive. But how? She had no matches, no lighter. Desperation clawed at her throat. The figure took a step closer, its skeletal hand reaching out towards her. Its touch, she knew, would be her undoing. She had to do something. Anything. Thinking fast, she grabbed the ornate candle holder, ignoring the searing pain as the hot metal burned her hand. She lifted it, holding the flickering flame towards the creature. The creature hissed, a sound like nails scraping across a chalkboard. It recoiled from the light, momentarily halting its advance. But the flame was dying, the wax melting away rapidly. Sarah knew she couldn't hold on for much longer. Her mind raced, searching for a way out. The windows were boarded shut, the door was locked from the outside. She was trapped. The creature, sensing her fear, let out a guttural growl and lunged towards her. Sarah screamed, throwing herself backwards, narrowly avoiding the creature's grasp. The candle holder flew from her hand, clattering to the floor. The flame flickered once, twice, then died, plunging the cabin into absolute darkness. A blood-curdling scream ripped through the silence, but it wasn't Sarah's scream. It was a chorus of screams, filled with unimaginable pain and terror. The air crackled with a malevolent energy, pressing down on her, suffocating her. Then, as quickly as it began, it stopped. Silence returned, heavy and absolute. Sarah lay on the cold wooden floor, her heart pounding against her ribs. She couldn't see, couldn't breathe. The darkness was all-consuming, suffocating. She fumbled in the darkness, her hand closing around something cold and metallic, the candle holder. She scrambled to her feet, her fingers trembling as she felt for the candle. It was gone. Panic surged through her, a raw primal instinct. She had to get out, now! She stumbled towards the door, her hands outstretched, feeling her way through the suffocating darkness. The air was thick with the stench of decay and something else, something metallic and sickly sweet. Her hand found the doorknob. It was unlocked. She threw the door open and stumbled out into the night. The cool night air hit her face like a slap, filling her lungs with much-needed oxygen. She didn't look back. She didn't need to. She could feel the presence of the creature, cold and menacing, right behind her. She ran, her lungs burning, her legs screaming for respite. She ran until she couldn't run anymore, collapsing beneath a towering oak tree, gasping for breath. As she lay there, catching her breath, Sarah's mind raced with the events of the night. The forest around her was eerily silent, save for the rustling of leaves in the gentle breeze. She could feel the damp earth beneath her, grounding her in the present moment, yet her thoughts were scattered, trying to piece together the puzzle of what had just happened. Suddenly she heard a familiar sound, laughter. It was faint at first, almost like an echo from a distant memory, but it grew louder, more distinct. The laughter was unmistakable, and it sent a shiver down her spine. It was coming from the direction of the cabin, the very cabin she had fled from in terror. The moonlight cast long shadows on the forest floor, creating an almost surreal landscape that seemed to shift and change with every step she took. Confused and apprehensive, she slowly made her way back towards the clearing. Each step was deliberate, her senses heightened, alert to any sign of danger. The forest seemed to close in around her, the trees whispering secrets she couldn't quite understand. The cabin was bathed in the soft glow of moonlight, its wooden structure appearing almost ethereal in the pale light. It stood there, silent and imposing, a stark contrast to the chaos that had unfolded within its walls. And standing on the porch, silhouetted against the light, were her friends. They seemed almost ghostly, their figures outlined by the soft glow emanating from the cabin. It was a scene that felt both familiar and alien at the same time. They were laughing, their faces etched with a mixture of amusement and relief. It was as if they had been waiting for her, expecting her return. The sight of their carefree expressions only added to her confusion. "Sarah!" one of them called out, their voice cutting through the night air. It was a voice she knew well, one that had always brought her comfort, but now, it felt different, almost mocking. "There you are! We were worried about you!" another friend exclaimed, their tone filled with genuine concern. Or was it? Sarah couldn't be sure anymore. Everything felt off, like a dream she couldn't wake up from. "You ran off so suddenly," they continued, their words echoing in her mind. She remembered the fear that had gripped her, the overwhelming urge to escape. But now, standing before them, that fear seemed almost irrational. Sarah stared at them, her mind reeling. She tried to make sense of their expressions, their words, but it was like trying to grasp smoke, elusive and intangible. "What's going on?" she whispered, her voice hoarse from the night's events. "The creature, the darkness." Her words trailed off, the memories of the terror she had felt still fresh in her mind. Her friends exchanged a look, one that spoke volumes. It was a look of shared knowledge, of secrets kept hidden. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. Then, one of them stepped forward, a chilling smile spreading across his face. It was a smile that held no warmth, only cold, calculated intent. "What creature, Sarah?" he asked, his voice dripping with mock concern. The way he said her name sent a wave of dread through her. "There was never any creature," he continued, his words cutting through the night like a knife. The certainty in his voice was unnerving. He paused, letting the words hang in the air, their weight pressing down on her. The silence that followed was deafening. Then, he added, his voice barely a whisper, "Or maybe, there was only ever you." The words sent a jolt of terror through her. She felt as if the ground had been pulled out from under her, leaving her in free fall. As Sarah stared at her friends, their faces contorted into grotesque masks of mockery in the moonlight. The familiar features twisted into something unrecognizable, something monstrous. She realized the horrifying truth. She wasn't the victim. She was the monster. The realization hit her like a tidal wave, overwhelming and inescapable. And the ritual? It had just begun. The night was far from over, and the true horror was only just beginning to unfold.